Well, Amber, thanks so much for spending some time with me this evening as we are chatting about politics, which I think has become one of my new favorite topics to discuss on the podcast. So let's just jump right into it. And if you can share a little bit about how you got interested in politics, that'd be a great start.
Well, it is a part of who I am. My aunt was a Panther. Helped desegregate the schools in Jefferson County, Kentucky, Louisville, to be exact, in
Mm.
1976, and um, just have always been involved. Went to Howard right after high school, and participated in the protest and worked on Harold Washington's campaign in high school. I worked on the um, the first black female, well, first black period, elected to the county commissioners in Winston-Salem. So it's always just been a part of who I am. But now I tell people I'm an educator who moonlights as a politician because I'm always an educator first.
Yeah.
Been a part of education for 30 years, K-12. Did 2 years at Ohio State, but it's through that work and being a grassroots organizer that I kind of got pushed into this when the seat opened, and people in the community were saying, we think you should run. And so I didn't have any formal political experience when I ran. And so I run a grassroots campaign. It's filled with college students, my previous students, parents, people who just believe in me in the community. And
Yeah.
so it is
Yeah.
truly like an all-encompassing campaign.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Can you just share a little bit about what a grassroots campaign is for those who might not be familiar with it?
Sure. So, for me, grassroots campaigning means it's very difficult for me to raise money. Women, and particularly women and men of color, we just don't get the large dollar donors as some others. So we heavily rely on volunteers and community support to get our campaigns moving. And so, this is my fifth year, my third term, and I still have yet to raise the kind of money that I need to run a well-oiled, organized campaign. But we managed to keep getting it done with those
Mhm.
small dollar donors, and so I'm very thankful for that.
Awesome, awesome. So I think that that's an important thing for my listeners to hear, right? Is that the money, whatever money can be contributed to folks is helpful. And so sometimes I think women struggle with knowing how to get involved. And so,
Mhm.
even a couple dollars is a big help for folks.
Absolutely. I tell people I've yet in North Carolina, 6,400 is the max you can give to a campaign. And I've not gotten one of those donors yet. But the donation that I hold nearest and dearest was one of my mother's previous parent, who donated $2 to the campaign.
Mm,
And I tell people because I was aware of her situation, I know what it took
yeah.
for her to give that $2. But even though I didn't want to take it, I understood that she wanted me to know that she was supporting me. And so it is the one donation that I hold nearest and dearest to my heart.
I love to hear that. That's great.
Mhm.
That's great. Well, you have shared that recruitment is a really important part of politics. Can you talk a little bit about recruitment in politics and what that looks like for my listeners?
I think there is nothing official that can really train you for being a good quote unquote candidate. I think when I look at trying to recruit, I look at people who's already doing the work in community, whether you're organizing or you're attending school board meetings already, or you're a part of a civic club or organization that's doing the work. And so for me, because I'm not your typical elected official, that I pretty much went from being the principal of an elementary school to the highest elected office. I also think that I'm an example of there is no, you must do this, then this, then
Mm,
this. I think it's whatever you're passionate about. And that's what I always tell people is start where your passion is. And if you have an inkling that you might want to run, then start doing things in the community so that you can learn as much as you can about that position from what the standpoint of what you love to do.
Yeah. So what kind of things in the community would you recommend for folks to get involved with? Or are things that maybe they're already doing and they don't recognize that that would be powerful for maybe an elected position?
I don't think that there is one thing, right?
Okay.
Like if you are passionate about school board, my new thing is it's not just enough to say you are a part of PTA because what you do being a part of PTA does give you kind of insight as to what happens actually in schools.
Hmm.
But it's more important for you to attend school board meetings and ask questions and know what that position does. No matter what you're running for, it is critical that you understand the role of that position. And so it just breaks my heart when people are running for school board and they talk about increasing parental involvement. That's not what you do. Or
Mm.
you ask a candidate, what is the current school system budget? And they have no idea, which,
Yeah.
is a primary function of of the school board.
Yeah.
Or you decide you want to run for the position I hold. And you don't understand that as legislators, we're lawmakers. And
Mhm.
so a lot of times people are confused exactly what that is. And what they're wanting to do as far as, impacting the community really fits more in line with city council
Mhm.
or perhaps even county commissioner. So I think understanding what those positions do and then figuring out from there which uh, is something that you're really interested in because you have to love this, right? And so even though I had never held an elected position, I think it's an extension of the work that I already do
Mhm.
as a public servant, as an educator, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so being in a position to now be a voice in the room for people that hadn't had a voice in the room and to advocate for some of our most disadvantaged people in the community is something that I live for, and it is very much a part of who I am.
Mm. I love to hear that. That's so great. I come from a whole background of educators. In my family, both my parents were educators.
Mhm,
And all my siblings do something in the school system at
mhm.
some point. And I'm a higher ed educator,
Right, right.
but still an educator and teaching folks
Right.
all the time. And so all of this is really resonating with me and hitting some of the heartstrings that I know. So very cool.
Well, and I think too, we hear a lot now that, civics is no longer taught in schools. And I think whether you're higher ed or whether you're K-12 or even with the babies, right? The 4-year-olds in pre-K, it's never too early to begin to have conversations with those students that we have the responsibility for educating because it may not necessarily fall in your syllabus or, in the standard course of study, but it is worth having conversations. And I remember several summers ago, I was the executive director for a Children's Defense Fund Freedom School. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's a through the Children's Defense Fund, and it's teaching the love of reading.
Mm,
But in teaching the love of reading,
yeah.
it also has a curriculum that has standards and it's social activism and engagement. And so we have a National Day of Social Action. And this particular year, my babies at my site wanted to bring awareness to childhood hunger.
Mm,
They chose the topic. Many of them deal with that in their homes and
yeah.
food insecurities. We live in a food desert, and
Yeah.
the community where the school is, where I also live, is highly impacted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they made that decision, and they did the research, and they determined how many people in Forsyth County are impacted by that, and the number of children that are impacted by that. And they decided two things. They wanted to use paper plates to indicate the number of children that go hungry every day.
Mm,
Each plate represented 5,000 mouths.
Wow.
And then they wanted to protest march from our school to the soup kitchen and shelter.
Hmm.
And so we did. It was a little over a mile. They made the signs. It was very organic, but as we began to march, people began to block off the streets and, started recording it. And by the time we got to the soup kitchen, the number of people that had joined and were videotaping and had called the media, it was all led by the children. Well,
Mm.
they will never forget that,
Yeah.
right? They were taught that they can identify a problem that exists in their community or even within their family, and now they all know what they need to do to advocate for change. And so that's why I said it's never too early.
Yeah.
I remember when my daughter was she was in daycare, and she was Rosa Parks.
Hmm.
She was the bus driver as they acted out Rosa Parks. She was 4, and she still remembers that. So
Mm.
again, civic engagement can never start too young, and it's never too old. And I think we're at a point now, because you're in higher ed, is we have got to begin to talk to our current eligible voters
Yeah.
and see what's important to them
Yeah.
and see what they expect from somebody that's trying to get their vote and what's important to them. And I hang out with young people all the time. So when people start to say that they're not engaged and they don't vote, yeah, they do. But what they don't do is give away their vote.
Yeah.
What they don't do is vote straight party ticket.
Hmm.
What they do is they do their research, and then they will what I call slingshot vote. They will
Hmm.
go in and vote for the people that they feel like is doing the work.
Hmm.
So I think, there's this, we really are a bridge, right? We have our parents and grandparents who will vote no matter what, and depending on what party affiliation, will vote straight ticket.
Right.
Then you have those of us that are in the in-between generation, and we tend to vote like our parents. We're becoming more savvy
Hmm.
and not always voting straight ticket. But these new voters, many of them are registering as independents.
Hmm.
They want the ability to vote for who they want to vote for. And I think anyone who's thinking about coming into politics definitely need to spend some time with young people and understanding kind of what's important to them because they are the largest eligible block of voters. And
Hmm.
so we've got to begin to engage them on their terms.
Yeah. 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 Well, and so I appreciate that, right? Like that's a good reminder that we've got a large opportunity to get folks engaged and to hear their voices and so for women specifically, I'm curious, why is talking about politics important for women? Why should we be discussing this?
Well, even for women who are not like a political, I tell people I'm a couch political scientist, and you may not love it in the way that others like myself love it, but it's important to know right now, particularly for women, our rights are under attack. We have less rights now than our grandparents.
Yeah.
And so whether it's reproductive health, whether it's voter suppression, which we know is not just about suppressing the vote of um, our Black and brown voters, but also women. We're seeing DEI. People want to make that about a Black issue, and it's being kind of portrayed as that. But we know that the number one a beneficiary of our diversity, equity, and inclusion policies are white women. It gives them the ability to start their own businesses and have a level of independence. So I'm saying if you're a woman right now in America, if you're a mommy, we're rolling back our vaccines and we are talking about defunding public education and we're rolling back money for pre-K. That's important.
Yep.
That falls right in your wheelhouse. And if you are fortunate enough to be married, now they're even trying to take away your right to have some freedom within your marriage. And so I think for women, whatever you're passionate about, um, you can find a reason to be involved in politics. And as I train my constituents about how to be an effective advocate, I teach them how to go onto the North Carolina Legislative webpage and how to find committees and identify who's on those committees and how to track bills and see what bills are actually moving and what bills we call as tabled or dead, which no bill is really dead,
Yep.
because I think that's part of what we need to show not only women, but just anyone who has an interest. And I jokingly say, it's like a water hose or a fire hose. It's so much coming at you that you can be overwhelmed and shut down.
Mhm.
But I said, if you want to meet on the front porch, you have a little iced tea. If you want to meet on the back porch, you have a little wine or and find out what are your friends in your circle interested about. And let part of that conversation be about how you can advocate
Mhm.
um, and kind of be reporters for each other as you kind of keep up with the issues that are important to you. So that way you don't have to be an expert or try to follow every little thing. You kind of focus on what really is important to you, and it's manageable. And then together we're educating each other.
That's great. You just threw a whole bunch of tips in there too, which was great because that was going to be my next question. So it was like you were reading my mind on how to get folks involved. Because I heard, look at the websites, understand what the bills are, who's on the committees, right? I heard talk to your neighbors and your colleagues and
Mhm.
friends,
Mhm.
and create I heard it as a support system, right? Create
Correct.
that support system
Mhm.
around the political topics that you have community around, that you're passionate
Mhm.
around. So, what other?
Absolutely. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna ask, what other tips do you have for women who might be a little bit wishy-washy about how do I get involved? How do I educate myself? How do I go to the poll? Those kinds of things.
So, again, I think first you have to find something that, when you're looking at the news and that comes up, right? Whether we're talking about vouchers or we're talking about resegregating schools. I mean, whatever it is, when you hear it, reproductive rights, if you start to scream at the TV or it just like you get angry, that's
Yep.
where you start,
Yeah.
right? There. Because all of us have one thing that is impacted by elected officials that they feel passionate about. That's where you start.
Yeah.
And there is this organization called Vote Mama, and they support mothers. I'm an endorsed candidate because I am a grandmother raising my grandson. And
Okay.
so when I was told about them, I was like, well, I don't think they'll do it because my daughter is grown,
Mhm.
and they were like, no, I mean, you're raising your grandson, and that's like your, second act for parenthood. And so
Mhm.
there are organizations out there that will definitely support women and encourage mommies, right, to run
Mhm.
because oftentimes, I find that moms, particularly if they're stay-at-home moms or even if they're working moms, right, they're already juggling a lot of balls and they just think, I don't have anything else to give. But if you make the decision, you'll find that there is really a big support system out there to help you run.
Mhm.
And you're never too young and never too old. It's just a matter of doing something. And so for the people who perhaps participated in this last weekend of protest or the rally that we had, the nationwide rally we had maybe a month and a half ago. Now what? Like
Mhm.
you got out there, you got it out, you said what you needed to say, you had your signs. Now what? You can't leave it there. You've got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you are writing, or calling, or emailing, or you're organizing, maybe you're a person that's real good with pulling together a group of people to do letter writing campaigns to voters. Talk to your local party, whether it's Democrat or Republican, to say, we want to work with you to reach out to our disenfranchised voters. And so um, that's been really hugely successful here. I've been doing that since I ran. And I long before I even asked for a vote, I touched the people 3 times. It's first I'll send a postcard like, we miss you, and really need to see you. And then I will either call or knock on the door. And then if I knock on the door, then the last thing that I'll do is call them before ever asking them, for their vote. But if you're a volunteer, as you're knocking on the door, you want them to feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. And I think we've lost that touch.
Yeah.
And I also think that it's important for us to make sure that they have a way to the polls. And if you're in a state like North Carolina where we're throwing people off the voting rolls, we are trying to literally steal elections. We're purging voters. It's so important for us to get those lists and those and call people. And I say, starting your circle of influence.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we want to jump in and do something big in community. But how about you go to church and say, you know what? Let's call our members. Let's get those lists and let's call our members.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? They are already in relationship with you. So they're
Yeah.
not going to be surprised when you call,
Right.
right? And you find out they need a ride. Well, if these are the same people you have to pick up on Sunday to bring them to church, then they are the same ones that's going to need a ride to the polls. And
Mm-hmm.
guess what? You can do that because your insurance already covers your members. If you're a member of a Greek organization, start with your inactive members, making
Mm-hmm.
sure that their registrations are current, or if they're registered at all. Again, that's somebody you're in community with. And
Yeah.
then follow them all the way through and make sure as it gets closer to election time, you reach back out to them and make sure they have a way to the polls. So that's grassroots organizing
Mm-hmm.
right there because
Yeah.
we start small and we start around the area of interest, and oftentimes we want to just knock on doors and get out in community, but we're not in relationship in community, so we're
Yeah.
not as impactful as we would be if we
Yeah.
start in our circle of influence.
Love it. I love it.
Mhm.
Well, that hits home for this podcast, right? I talk about being in a community with other women, so you're hitting right home, uh, right where everyone hopefully connects to this podcast. So,
Mhm.
well, Representative Baker, I appreciate the time and your time and sharing your knowledge and your experiences. I'm curious what kind of final thoughts you have for my listeners.
I would say, with so much that we're experiencing right now, and it is turbulent times, and we definitely need to be safe and stay safe, but also be encouraged because as long as we continue to push back, as long as we continue to fight as a collective, we win.
Mm,
And so know that you have people who are in the minority party. I'm a Democrat, and it doesn't seem like we're getting a lot done, but we at the state level are using every tool like they are at the national level to push back. And so be encouraged that it may not look like what you're doing matters, but it does.
mm.
So again, whether it's phone calls, emails, writing postcards, do something in your little circle of influence. And when you put all of those little somethings together, it makes a big wave and it makes a difference.
That's great. That's great. I love that. I think that's the perfect kind of final thought for my listeners. So, thank you again so much for joining me for this episode. I think politics just continues to be something that women, especially, are not talking enough about. And so, I'm grateful for you to spend some time with me and with my listeners
Absolutely.
talking about this.
And if you need me to come back, I'll be glad to come back anytime. I know we will be getting geared up. I tell people in North Carolina, we run every 2 years. So
Yeah.
2026 for us started on November 6th.
All right.
So we are full-fledged into getting prepared to run. And so can't wait.
All right. I love it. I love it. All right. You heard it here, listeners, that every 2 years, so we got a midterm coming up, friends. So make sure you're getting educated and ready to go. So, well, friends, thank you for joining me for another episode. And I hope you learned as much as I did from Representative Baker as she talked about politics and how we can get involved and how it can hopefully be less intimidating for us who are maybe intimidated or just not sure where to start. So, friends, this week's affirmations: I'm done apologizing for spending time focused on me. I'm done apologizing for standing up for what I believe in. I'm done apologizing for fill in your blank here. Friends, go out there, have an incredible week, do the amazing things I know you're capable of. And remember to like, follow, and share wherever you're listening to this podcast episode. If you loved this episode, if you're re listening to other episodes and you think folks need to hear the message, please share it with them. We would love for you to help share the message. And if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button, please, or the little bell, or whatever your little subscription method is. You want to know when the next great episode every Monday morning will drop so that you can be right in tune with the podcast episodes. If you're not already following me on social media, my goodness, you are missing out. Make sure you are following me on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Instagram, Facebook. I am anywhere you can find me, TikTok. Make sure you go find me and find some really great messages from there, some clips from episodes and my guests, and just fun little inspirational nuggets as well. And if you want to be my guest, like Representative Baker or any of my past guests or upcoming guests, make sure you fill out the form at the link in my show notes or on any of my social media platforms. I want to hear what you're passionate about. What should we be talking about that we're not? And friends, remember, you're fabulous. You're a badass. You've got this, and I'm here for you.